Okay, it is 6 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. So calling to order the meeting of the Halifax Finance Committee. It is April 7th of 2025. We are meeting here at Town Hall. This meeting is being recorded by Area 58. Committee members in attendance in the room: Cheryl Burke, Michael Bennett, Frank Johnston, Bill Smith, and myself. On Zoom, we have Ed Bryan and Mike Rignetto. So we have the agenda that's been out. The first item on the agenda is minutes and minutes approval. We don't have any minutes in front of us for this meeting to review or approve. So we will bypass that specific agenda item, at which time we will move to the second one. The second item on the agenda is the review of the town meeting warrant, and Cody sent this out to the group earlier today. If you've had an opportunity to have a look at it, please have your questions ready, but we are going to turn the meeting over to Cody so that he can go through it with us now.
All right, 1 minute, I'll share my screen. So everyone can see Charlotte's just still printing. I'll grab it as soon as it's done.
Recording in progress.
For a second. I'm just going to start going through. I'm going to have to restart my computer here. I'm not Sure what's going on. All right, so I'll share that as soon as my computer restarts, but, so you see we have a total of 31 articles technically on the warrant this year. Initially, we were anticipating a special town meeting, but I do not see, we don't have anything that would require a special town meeting, so we will not need that at this point. In the attachment sent out to the committee was the draft of that letter that the finance committee puts together. If you have any suggestions, edits, or anything on that, we can certainly discuss that at some point, and Jim has it as well, but we can do that. Getting into the articles, so Article 1 is our typical article here, enact and reports of town officers committees. This is kind of one of those articles that the town has always done. The reason for this was prior to printed town reports, a really long time ago. Basically what would happen is you'd actually have boards, committees, departments would actually get up and give their annual report at the annual town meeting. Halifax has always kept it on just to give an opportunity if someone wants to get up from a board committee or whatever. So that's pretty typical. Article 2 is the wage and personnel bylaw replacement and amendments that you had previously discussed with the Board of Selectmen. So the 2%, we broke them out into different aspects this year. We've got that feedback from the community from last year that we grouped them all together. So separated them this year to 3 different pieces basically, which is the 2% cost of living adjustment, remove the veteran services officer from a stipend position to a grade 6, and then replace the current wage and personnel bylaw with, and we put the whole text of that in the bylaw. And it's pretty simple, but that's the idea. It was simplifying that language in there. So I guess, do you want me to go one by one, then you guys can decide if you want to recommend for, against, or wait till town meeting, or do you want me to run through each and then come back? How do you want to?
I just assume we recommend as many as we can.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah. If there's something that we're kind of on the fence on or something.
If anybody has any questions, we can stop and discuss it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Right.
So do you want to go article by article, then you discuss it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's go that way. So.
All right. So Article 1 is just the hearing and reports.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So if that's one that you want to recommend, if someone wants to make a motion to recommend, and then
Second.
you'll have to do roll call because you have.
Okay, so to recommend Article 1, roll call vote, Cheryl?
Yeah.
Mike Bennett?
Yep.
Frank Johnston?
Yes, Article 1.
Ed?
Yes.
Bill Smith?
Yes.
Mike Rugnetta?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Article 1 is approved.
Good. Article 2 is the wage and personnel bylaw components.
My only question with that is do we want to take C out and make it its own article?
Well, the issue is our town meeting bylaw specifies that articles 1 through 4 go together and they're fixed into those articles.
Oh, okay.
So we've historically put it as one article, although they can be taken up independently. So if somebody says, I want to move portions A and B,
Okay.
like the budget, right? We do line by line.
Right.
You do this article separately. That way if there were a component like C that maybe there was concerns about, you could still pass A and B and then do C separately.
Okay.
All right. Anybody have any questions, comments on Article 2? Can I have a motion to approve Article 2 for town warrants?
So moved.
Second. Thank you, Cheryl Burke. Roll call.
Yes.
John, Mike Bennett,
Yes.
Frank Johnston,
Yes, Article 2.
Ed Bryan,
Yes.
Bill Smith,
Yes.
Mike Rignetta.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well.
All right, Article 3 is the salaries of elected officials. So moderator, selectmen, and assessors are those stipended elected, moderator obviously is self-explanatory, and assessors and town clerk. And then we have the town clerk, which again, this would bring her up to that step 1, the grade where she should be. Treasurer collector puts her on that scale. And these are all include the 2% COLA as voted by wage and personnel as well. So it factors all that in. The only one that is not in line is the highway surveyor. He did not want to be on the same scale. He only only requested a flat 2%, and he was against more. So I honored his request for the flat 2%.
Okay. Any comments or questions? And can I have a motion to approve Article 3?
So approved, so moved.
Second.
Very good. Roll call vote. Cheryl?
Yes.
Mike Bennett?
Yes.
Frank Johnston?
Yes, Article 3.
Ed Bryan?
Yes.
Bill Smith?
Yes.
Mike Rignetta?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well.
All right, I'm gonna try to make the switch to the screen here. So while I do this, Article 4, obviously the figures aren't updated in the warrant yet, but it's the what you would voted on
Right.
last week, the recommended budget there. So I guess now is a good opportunity if and Lindsay did an excellent job of addressing anything, but if there's anything that's come up since then or any questions that were not addressed regarding the operating budget in that recommended column, that would be a good time to ask those. No questions?
I don't think so. It's all, the numbers are all the same.
Yeah, we haven't changed,
Yes,
nothing's changed since last week.
Right.
Exactly.
Anybody have any questions on the operating budget?
No, I'm good.
Motion to approve the operating budget?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Cheryl?
Yes.
Mike Bennett?
Yes.
Frank Johnston?
Yes, Article 4.
Ed Bryan?
Yes.
Bill Smith?
Yes.
Mike Rignetta?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. The operating budget is approved. So we're moving to Article 5.
Here it comes, Cody.
Dun, dun.
No, bingo.
Oh, look at that. Technology.
All right, everyone can see that?
Yep.
Cheryl, please. Okay, so Article 5 is something a little bit different this year. So Article 5 is usually sets the limits of our revolving funds, but we actually need to create a few new revolving funds. In order to do that, we have a bylaw that lists our revolving funds. So Article 5 effectively amends our general bylaw 23.3 subsection 5 and adds these 3 revolving funds. 2 of them were at the request of the elementary school. And then another one was one that actually should have been done last year for park maintenance. The idea is that if that is any park fees that are collected can be used right within that revolving fund to self-fund kind of the operations and maintenance at the park. The other 2 from the schools, they're not planning to necessarily implement these, but they requested that they be created in case they were looking to implement busing fees or full day kindergarten fees. So they still requested those.
So the 2 school ones, want to have a revolving fund in case they go to a busing fee schedule, but they didn't include that in their budget.
They do not plan to do it this year. The idea was that they just want it there in case they have to do it in future years. I confirmed just recently that they still want that one of these, and I was told that they did. But it just creates the account effectively, and that way there, if there were an issue at some point where they wanted to implement the fees, it's effectively a policy decision of the school committee to implement the fees. We would just then have the financial practice policy in place to see it through.
So we're not funding it.
No,
Nope, all this does is creates the account.
So these are the
there's money
amounts.
lines in there.
Yep, so that's just so we're required to put the maximum amounts annually. So this just creates the accounts, creates the maximums, and then Article 6, Article 7 will actually set the limits, which we do every year. We have to set the limits of every revolving fund
Right.
every year.
Right.
This just adds those 3 new accounts. And these are the columns that we have for every account within that bylaw.
I'm just concerned why the school wants to put these in place
Yeah.
this year when they said they weren't going to do these two things, specifically when they were presenting their budgets. And if potentially next year they're going to charge for busing or kindergarten, let's say, why don't they submit it at that time?
I think it's just trying to get things in place. I don't see a negative to doing this.
Well, I mean, it's gotta be done at town meetings, so they'd have to wait. So
Right.
if they wanna do it next year, they gotta wait till the end of the year.
Right.
And then, so it doesn't really help them out. So just setting it all up is really all they're doing.
I'm just concerned that once the budget season starts for the schools, they go ahead and implement a busing fee and a kindergarten fee, when in reality, we've already approved those
Right.
numbers within their budgets for the current future operating year, fiscal year 26. That's kind of where I'm at.
So I mean, nothing would, so even if you didn't move forward with this, they wouldn't necessarily be stopped from implementing those fees if they wanted to anyways. It just logistically becomes a challenge for us on the accounting side of it.
Yeah, so how does that work as far as they collect money for that and there's no account in place? Where does that money go at that point?
It goes into the general fund.
The town's general fund?
Yeah, they're part of the towns. All of their accounting is through us.
I think it's a positive as we think ahead to budget cycle for FY27, having some of this information already out there in advance. To Cody's point, nothing's going to it right now. It's just creating the accounts so that they exist. So for future planning, I think it's a good thing.
I understand going for the future, but it also allows them to implement it in this budget year that we're currently working on.
Yeah, it doesn't stop them.
FY20 doesn't stop them.
Doesn't stop them.
Right.
But they can't use funds that they don't have, though.
Well, they could, I guess the point Frank's trying to make is they could then implement the fee
Right,
for busing
and start collecting
and
for it
start collecting for it.
in FY26,
Right.
because now they have an account to put money in.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just, if they're actually thinking about seriously doing something like this, you should tie it to the fiscal year that they're going to want to implement the fee schedules.
Yeah.
In speaking with the administration, one of the reasons that they wanted to keep it on was obviously if they needed to rely on this next year or a future year, you're going into the budget with even more unknowns, because if you've budgeted, so let's say, I'm throwing numbers out there that have no merit, I'm just throwing them. So let's say they plan on $10,000 is going to come in for busing fees. And they then plan, okay, we're going to charge $10,000 a year, and that's $10,000 we can use towards our budget, let's say next year. Then not only do they have to, what if this doesn't pass at town meeting, right? Because it's not proactively been created. So now they've gone into their budget cycle with the unknown of, is this account, it's a policy decision of the school committee whether to charge for the fee or not, but the account obviously is a town meeting decision. It just, it adds an unknown to the fiscal year if they ever were to have to implement this.
So Cody, would it be too late to add something to this particular article that just says, accounts will not be used until FY27 or not to be used until FY27, or is it too late to do anything like that?
The only concern potentially would be that these were voted on by the school committee. And technically it would be changing, I guess, I don't think they've used particular language of the accounts will only be used starting in FY27. So it just could create a challenge where technically we weren't putting what they voted on in the warrant, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they've approved it as it's written.
The other thing that I'm reading here on the busing is fee to provide busing for Halifax Elementary School beyond requirements. Yeah. Keyword there is beyond requirements.
Yeah, we're legally obligated to provide transportation for.
And so they want to potentially charge for a fee for beyond the requirements that we're supposed to meet.
Why didn't they just put FY27 in after?
So just to be clear, I created this.
Oh.
I was given the information from the schools. I created the warrant. This is something that I created to match our current chart that's in the bylaws.
Well, there's no money in these accounts, but there's money.
So you have to set.
There's money there.
No, that's just, you have to set the maximums. So restrictions, conditions, or expenses payable from an account. So every account has a maximum restriction, basically.
So why doesn't it say just maximum? It looks like we've already put money in there.
I didn't create the chart. This is the chart within our bylaws.
I'm just saying.
There's a lot of things that probably should be clearer. But this is, those headings are directly from that chart, and I just filled in, the 3 accounts here. I mean, you could, so if the committee's concern is that of what Frank is saying, you could recommend this, and then when you get to Article 7, recommend a $0 amount for FY26, right? Because this just creates the account, allows it to be created. That's it.
I'd be all right.
If you want to make sure it's not utilized in FY26, recommend a 0.
Right.
And then that puts the maximum amount to be spent out of that account at 0. So then they're not going to create an account if you can't spend anything out of it. That's the whole point.
Right, well, the next year we up it to.
Yeah, and then but at least it's created.
Yeah.
So all you're doing is setting a maximum.
Okay, I'm comfortable
Yeah,
with
I like
something
that.
like that.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So we have to vote on them separately, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, good. Article 5 is one article, and then the other is,
Right.
And park maintenance is anticipating a $20,000 on collection of fees this
I
year.
don't think it'll be that high, no. That's just, we put that as a buffer, just in case we bring in, more money than
Be nice if we
we
could.
anticipated, but. A lot, and honestly, a lot of it has to do with, is this whole, personal watercraft, right? Is that going to be a portion, right? If that's applicable, and then there's some other fees applicable, we might get her up to around that 20. If it's not, it'll certainly be a lot less than that, right? But we're trying to plan if it were to be.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on Article 5?
No, I think I'm good. That satisfied me.
Yeah, that's a good point, Frank. Thanks for bringing it up. Okay, motion to approve Article 5.
So move.
Second.
Very good. Roll call vote. Cheryl?
Yes.
Mike Bennett?
Yes.
Frank Johnston?
Yes, on Article 5.
Ed Bryan? Yes?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Bill Smith?
Yes.
Mike Rignetta?
Yes.
Thank you, and I'm a yes as well. Article 5 is recommended.
So Article 6, this is another annual article. This is for our reserve fund, for our general fund, and also for our water department reserve fund. The motion will be different this year. We've historically always, so two parts to this. We're increasing it this year. We've always put aside only 75,000 for the general fund. We gotta increase that. I mean, 75,000 just doesn't cut it anymore. So, and hopefully we increase it a little more next year too, which probably should be up around 150, to be honest. But 100 this year, the idea is to fund part of it with free cash. And then the water department is funded with their retained earnings.
So the water department's funding with 50,000?
50,000, yep, so we're keeping the 50 for water department.
And town is funding with another 50 or 100?
100. Yeah,
So
two separate.
150,000 total.
Yeah, yep,
So it's 150 total.
150 total, correct, yeah.
Okay. Any questions?
I'm fine with that.
All right. Motion for Article 6.
So move.
Second?
Very good. Thank you. Roll call vote. Cheryl?
Yes.
Mike Bennett?
Yes.
Frank Johnston?
Yes, Article 6?
You, Ed Bryan?
Yes.
Bill Smith?
Yes.
Mike Rugnetta?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Motion, Article 6 is recommended. Okay, Article 7, revolving accounts.
Yep, so this sets the limits, the annual limits for each revolving account. What I'll do is I will reach out to the school administration. So the board, the selectmen hasn't approved this yet. They're approving it tomorrow. I anticipate them approving everything. I'll see tomorrow if they're amenable to just changing it to a 0 limit, because they never said anything about creating a limit for this year. I automatically put it in because typically if you have an account, you set a limit. So as long as that's their understanding, we'll remove it completely, and those two at least.
Okay, so I don't know if we can approve that if it's not going to be zeroed out.
Yeah, so I think this is a good one. You can say finance committee
We'll
recommendation.
do
at town
that.
meeting.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that at the town meeting. And why does the building inspector have $100,000 limit?
Oh yeah, this isn't for the building inspector. This is for our part-time, it falls under the inspector, but it's for our part-time inspectors. So plumbing, gas, wiring inspectors. So the way our system works is we don't pay them like an hourly rate. We have it so, let's say there's a permit fee they get a percentage of the permit fee. So we have a revolving account set up. So whatever comes in, 65% goes out to the inspector, and then we keep the remaining portion. So again, it's one of those things. We usually aren't at 100, but if we have a big permitting year,
Right.
we have to be able to pay our inspectors.
There's quite a bit going on right now. I'm getting ready to go on.
Yeah, and we're actually gonna implement some separate policies for some of these bigger projects.
Okay.
Because the town has always had smaller projects, so the percentage has worked.
Right.
But, for some of these larger projects, it probably shouldn't be percentage based. It really should just be flat fee per inspection or something like that. So we're working with our building commissioner.
Yeah, these are 3 good sized commercial projects getting ready to go on.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
It's a revolving account for multiple inspectors, correct? That's how I understand that.
Yeah,
Part-time
it could be.
Well, part-time inspectors, third-party inspectors.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, so all of our part-time, it's plumbing, gas, wiring inspectors.
Yeah, but they're third-party inspectors, they're not town inspectors.
No, they're
They're employees
inspectors.
of the town?
Technically they're not our, they're more like a contractor.
Yeah, right, third party.
But they are technically in it, like, it's not someone we would hire like a company to come in and do it.
Right.
They're technically appointed as our inspectors,
And
but they don't fall under, they're not benefited or anything.
so are they 1099 employees or?
Yeah, little plates
Yeah.
though.
What's that?
Little plates though.
Well, it depends. Certain ones are appointed by the board of selectmen, and some are appointed by the building commissioner.
So they invoice the town and get paid?
We have correct, based on percentage.
Okay.
This is, it's always been that way in Halifax.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna vote on that at town meeting, right? Okay.
And so you can even vote prior to town meeting, they'll just provide your recommendation at town meeting, as long as you have the information that you need, you can vote prior to. Articles 8 through 12 are the acceptance of those streets. I think you guys were at the public hearing. Again, just trying to get, we have a ridiculous amount of unaccepted streets in Halifax. And just trying to get these, particularly the ones that are in good shape where we can accept them, trying to get them accepted where a lot of them we're not necessarily maintaining, but we're plowing them and stuff anyways. We had some occurrences over this past winter where a lot of the people were upset with, some of the way the street was plowed or whatever, and then it turned out they're not even accepted streets. We actually shouldn't even be plowing them.
Right.
Yeah.
So we do it as a public safety thing. In case there's a fire or ambulance or police need to get down there, that's why we plow them. But it's good if they're in good shape. It's good to get them, and then we at least get some Chapter 90 funding too.
How many road miles is it total?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I can
You know how much we're gonna give for Chapter 90?
It's not a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is not very much, yeah.
But again, if we're already kind of bearing some of the costs, we might as well. And not that it's the town's responsibility, but unfortunately, most people don't know that they're buying a house on a private road when they buy a home. And then once they come in, something happens and they call the town and say, hey, can you come fill this pothole? We go, no, we can't, it's on property. We literally cannot.
Yeah, Steve had said that some of them have drainage systems that need to be maintained annually now as part of our stormwater management program.
Yeah.
There's additional cost for that, and hopefully has that been accounted for in the highway budget numbers?
I think you should have enough flexibility in there.
Okay.
Okay. So are we voting on these as a group? 8 through 12
You
or?
can, as long as if your vote would be the same, you can lump them together. If there's a particular concern with one or any, then you could do them separately, but.
I drove down a couple of these and they look fine to me,
Okay.
you know.
Yes, we should accept them.
I personally will accept them, yes, because of two reasons. One, they looked okay, and two, as a taxpayer, if I lived on that street and I'm paying taxes and I'm not getting served, that's a problem.
Right.
And we're already doing emergency type of work on them anyhow with the weather, so we may as well have more control over them from a liability standpoint as a town.
And the premise for Steve nominating these roads was that they weren't in bad shape.
Right.
Right.
They were in reasonably good shape, quick
Right.
fix, and they were okay, so,
Right.
yeah, so that should be good.
Anybody? Okay,
I'll
so
make a motion for Articles 8 through 12, acceptance of Bourne Drive, Christmas Tree Lane, Danson Lane, Heron Road, and Riders Way as a public way to the town.
Second.
okay, very good. Roll call vote. Cheryl,
Yes.
Mike Bennett,
Yes.
Frank Johnston,
Yes.
Ed Bryan,
Yes.
Bill Smith,
Yes.
Mike Rugnetta,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. So we will recommend those to those articles for the warrant.
Article 13, this is cleaning up article. So for those of you that were on the committee in fiscal 23, go back a few years, right, the Massachusetts Attorney General reached some settlements with several of the pharmaceutical companies, these opioid settlement funds. Prior to fiscal 24, the finance laws in the state require that unless there were a specific approved purpose, the money has to go into the general fund.
Right.
Unless you create a separate account at town meeting. In fiscal 23, at this town meeting, May of 2023, what we did is in Article 17, 18, we created a special purpose stabilization fund, an opioid stabilization fund. And then we funded it with all the money that we had gotten so far in fiscal 23 with the opioid fund, which is $32,901.14. In fiscal So we did that actually too soon. The money should have fallen to free cash first, and then we should have appropriated it. So the state rejected that article, and we submitted it. And then in fiscal '24, the law changed where they allowed what's called a special purpose fund. And that allows the money, because it's a special purpose, the opioids is now a special purpose fund. So the money automatically can come in, get put right into that account, and then can get appropriated with the Board of Selectmen's approval. So you don't need a stabilization fund anymore to put the money aside, basically is what it comes down to. Prior to that law change, you did, hence why we had to go through this. It's a lot cleaner not having to do it this way, because not only are we not creating a stabilization funds require 2/3 vote. So anytime we want to spend something, it would have to go through town meeting. Things may come up mid-year. You're not talking a ton of money, but you're talking some, where there may be an opportunity for the town to use some of its opioid settlement funds. And if we haven't gone through town meeting with this portion, we can't do anything with it. So it's really cleaning it up and putting it with the rest of our other opioid funds. And then hopefully we can start to utilize it.
So that fund, the opioid special reserve fund, isn't that supposed to be specifically used for addiction issues, whether it's through training or material supplies or things of that nature? Is that correct?
That's what we're doing. It has to be used for those.
Is there a committee?
We actually just put one together. We're meeting later this month to start throwing out some ideas and then make some presentations, probably the start of the next fiscal year to the select board.
Yeah.
So we haven't spent any of the money that we received?
No, and part of it is, you see reports on this, right? All towns aren't utilizing it.
Yes.
A big part of it is because of this, right here, this law that made it very difficult for us to utilize.
Right.
Where, you prior to that law change, you had to not only account for it, but you had to get approval at town meeting to spend any of it. And things come up mid-year, right? That you may want to utilize it for. So it was difficult, particularly towns like us where it's not, it's some money, but it's not enough to hire a position for multiple years or something like that. Like the cities are taking in a lot of money where they can do that, so it's a little bit easier. Or if you have a city council, right, you don't need town meeting approval. City council can just vote on it.
What type of committee is being formed for this?
So we have an internal group, Board of Health, Fire Department, Police Department, myself, COA.
No citizens at large?
Not at this point, no.
Well, it's used to put like those, not next lot boxes all over town, we put it with like Walmart, you put playground, a couple of town hall, and people can access them.
Is that what Holbrook has done
Oh, yeah.
with their money?
Yeah, there's a lot of things out there. The Plymouth County Sheriff's Department is running a program where basically a town can elect to defer X amount to the sheriff's, to the prison there. And then they can use it as the kind of like release programs for Halifax residents, for instance. So if we said, here's $10,000, they have a system where they'll oversee it and maybe utilize some for transportation for a recently released individual with previous addiction, or any sort of outpatient treatment, or job, or any transportation, housing, some first-time housing expenses. So that's just an example. I'm not saying we are going to use it for that, but there.
Is that an example of something that Holbrook did with their money?
No, they didn't do the boxes so far.
They just did the boxes,
They have a committee meets once a month, and they go over ideas, and decide how they're going to disperse the money. They have $100,000.
Yeah.
They do training too.
I was gonna say training.
Yeah.
And what's the training with the schools, the students, or
You can train at the schools, and you can do community trainings,
community training?
Just like a DARE program or something?
like how to make this and that. And,
Yeah.
Those boxes are very handy, you just put them up. They work really well.
And what do they have, the Narcan in them?
Narcan,
Yeah.
If you go in the kitchen, we have one in there now, actually. We just have
Do you?
okay.
Is there a shelf life on those, Bill?
I mean, I can't, maybe it's expired, you can still use it.
Yeah, well, yeah,
You have to use it, yeah. Probably is.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact number.
It's like 2 or 3 years or something like that. It's the actual expiration.
Do you know what the cost of that stuff is, Bill?
Not sure.
Okay.
We got one quote that is just police station, town hall, stores, playgrounds, all over the place.
Does this money also support the fire department carrying the Narcan kits, or is that something that's through their own budgets, or can this money be used
So I
for
think the
that?
community
as
can
well?
designate the fire department.
Yeah, okay.
Can do.
The state has a whole list of things now that you can utilize it for. One of the nice things about it, about where we are now, is you're starting to see, okay, these are allowed uses. Because when it first came out, nobody knew, well, what can it actually be used for? So there's a lot of, but again, this is not determining how we're spending it or anything. This is simply cleaning it up and getting it into the accurate account, from then further approval by the selectmen.
Very good. Any further discussion on Article 13?
No.
A motion to recommend.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. Roll call vote. Cheryl?
Yes.
Michael Bennett?
Yes.
Frank Johnston?
Yes, on Article 13.
Thank you, sir. Ed Bryan?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Bill Smith?
yes,
Mike Rugnetta?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so that is recommended.
Next is the funding of the FY 26 capital plan. So obviously the capital planning committee met, and the list was a little bit more expansive than this, but, as you know, free cash is being utilized for the operating budget this year. So we removed those items at the vote of the selectmen. So this leaves what's here, our inspection, the assessing department. This is a requirement from the Department of Revenue, that it be done. Fire department gear and rescue tools. The gear gets us on the cycle, as the chief had mentioned to you guys last year. It also has a few, we took some gear out of his operating budget just to clear some money up. So if he has new hires, there's a couple of sets of gear in here for that as well. Firearms are due. We're 10 years old, so need to get new firearms for our police department. Typically we do 2 cruisers, but that was one of the things that was slashed from the capital plan. So we're only doing 1 cruiser this year. Library window replacement, 2 town meetings ago. So May of 23, there was money appropriated for the windows. We finally got the engineering plan completed, and it's going to cost us a little less than 20 more. We added the buffer just in case. The last thing we want to do is be in the same situation. Road maintenance, we do 300,000 annually. Stormwater management, again, this was in the operating budget, but it's capital related to stormwater management. So it makes sense to put it under the capital plan. And again, also freed up a little bit of cash in our operating budget, but it makes sense here. In the water department, the water treatment plant upgrades, this is a payment toward basically that debt, to pay down that band. Short-term borrowing we have, retained earnings are well over $1 million. So this is kind of the right move here. There was another item. They were looking to do some sort of carport over at the water department.
Yeah.
In speaking with them, apparently there was miscommunication between our facilities and water department, and they don't seem ready to do that. So we took it off.
Okay.
So we're gonna stay with those, canopy tents they're using?
I guess that's what you could call them, yeah.
Yeah. Regarding, the firearms replacement, the guns that are being replaced, the sidearms, what happens to them?
They traded it.
traded.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
you
that-
get it traded, do you get
Oh,
any
yeah.
money for those?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's why this is only 15,000.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's 15,000, yeah.
Yeah.
So they have a value outside of, law enforcement?
Yep.
Yeah. And this will replace, each officer will get a new service revolver?
Correct.
No, not revolvers anymore, but, yeah, okay.
That's
What about their long guns? Is
That's
this
a real-
included in these numbers too?
not that price, no.
No? So, what you're saying is 15,000 is a good deal?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
it's a great deal. And turn that down.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's the only question I had on here.
All right. Anyone else have any questions on the capital plan? Okay, motion to recommend the capital plan.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. Roll call vote. Cheryl?
yes.
Mike Bennett?
Yes.
Frank Johnston?
Yes, on the capital.
Sir. Ed Bryan?
Yes.
Bill Smith,
Yes.
Mike Rugnetta,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Capital plan is recommended.
Article 15 is an amendment to our general bylaws, the town meeting bylaw. So we actually have a bylaw that governs how town meeting operates. In kind of just being here the past couple of years, there were a couple of small things that I recommended to the board, and the board kind of had asked that we update. The first is so right now, so the changes are highlighted. I'm sorry, they're italicized and underlined, the changes. And if there's anything being struck out, there's a strike mark through it. So the first change is in 47.1, we added and location of meeting. And the reason is, you all saw at our December town meeting, the pure volume, which is a good thing. We really don't have a place to house that many individuals. And the way that Massachusetts general law is, town meeting actually has to be held within the confines of your community unless you have a bylaw that allows otherwise. Our bylaw did not allow otherwise at this point. So just trying to be proactive in case this were to happen again. Naturally, the next available spot would be the high school, middle school at Silver Lake. So this would just allow the board of selectmen to make that determination in the future. The next one is just, it's a town administrator. It's the former title of the position, executive administrator. So just cleaning that up. And then rules of practice. Again, this is something we use town meeting times in recent history. That's what governs town meeting in Massachusetts. Robert's rules is not specific to town meeting. It actually is just specific to parliamentarian procedures, where town meeting times is how most moderators run town meeting, because it's very specific. You can look things up. So this was something that the board had brought to my attention when I first started, is the need to update that to match really current practice.
Hey, Cody, just a quick question on this one. If we did have to go to middle school or high school, is there a fee associated with having to do that move?
No, there's not. We would just have to provide a certificate of insurance, which our insurance company would provide.
Okay.
One year, you did Kingston collection too. You weren't here then during COVID. We had to do Kingston collection.
If there were additional staffing, EJ, like as a result, over at the schools, we would have to, pay whatever that staffing would be. But the simple utilization of the buildings, we would not, pay for.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any further discussion on Article 15? Okay, a motion to recommend Article 15?
So move.
Second,
Thank you. Roll call vote. Cheryl?
yes.
Mike Bennett?
Yes.
Frank Johnston?
Yes, on Article 15.
Ed Bryan?
Yes.
Bill Smith?
Yes.
Mike Rugnetta?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. It's recommended.
Article 16, this is an annual article the town does. It's $3,500 to support the South Coastal County Legal Services. They provide free legal services to individuals in Halifax in civil matters for elderly and low income.
Certainly makes sense to me.
Yeah. Oh, very worthy cause.
Any discussion on Article 16?
No.
Motion to recommend Article 16.
So move.
Second,
You roll call vote. Cheryl?
yes.
Mike Bennett?
Yes.
Frank Johnston?
Yes, on Article 16.
Ed Bryan?
Yes.
Bill Smith?
Yes.
Mike Rugnetta?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Article 16 is recommended.
Article 17 is a prior year bills article. I know of at least one from the schools that it's like, I think a little over $4,000 from fiscal 24 that came up. The reason that it's written this way is just in case something comes up between now and then, it's covered basically. And then it'll just be in the motion to pay X bill from the school department in the amount of X and where it's going to be funded from. So prior year bills require town meeting authorization.
That's it. Any landmines you know of?
I don't think we're gonna have anything on our side. Like I said, the schools had emailed me about a month ago, letting me know they got a bill in.
from FY '24.
Correct. I think it's 4,500, give or take.
Very common for vendors to bill in July after the school year's ended.
Oh, yeah,
They're very nice.
not
They
uncommon,
do it all the time.
yeah.
Well, interesting. I would never pay vendors after my fiscal year. closed. 6 weeks. I gave it 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But Jim's law or?
No, that was my company's law.
Yeah,
That's my company's
there
law.
are laws on the books. I mean,
There are laws on the
It's
books.
like there aren't or something.
I had it when I worked for
Because
the.
I used to operate that same way, Jim, and I got
Sorry,
brought to the carpet.
I never had that event. Okay, Article 17, any discussion? All right, motion to recommend.
So moved.
Second,
Very good. Roll call, Cheryl,
Yes.
Mike Bennett,
Yes.
Frank Johnston,
Yes, on Article 17.
Ed Bryan,
Yes.
Bill Smith,
yes,
Mike Rugnetta.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Article 17 is recommended.
Article 18 is another one of these annual articles, $3,500. This one is to support the South Shore Resource and Advocacy Center. They provide support in intervention services for domestic violence.
Another very worthy cause.
Mhm.
It is.
I'm all in favor of it. No, anybody, I'll make a motion on it for Article 18.
Second.
Second, okay. Roll call vote, Cheryl,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Frank Johnston,
Yes, on Article 18.
Ed Bryan,
Yes.
Bill Smith,
yes,
Mike Rugnetta,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Article 18 is recommended.
Article 19, another one of those annual articles, $150 for the county cooperative extension service. This is basically the 4-H, allows the town to participate in the 4-H programs.
Do we? I don't know. Okay.
good purpose.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions or discussion on Article 19?
No.
Nope.
Motion to recommend.
So moved.
Yeah.
Second.
Very good. Thank you. No worries. Roll call vote, Cheryl,
Yes.
Mike Bennett,
Yes.
Frank Johnston,
Yes, Article 19.
Ed Bryan,
Yes.
Bill Smith,
Yes,
Mike Rugnetta,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Article 19 is recommended.
Very good. Article 20 is an addition to our general bylaws, an anti-littering bylaw. This was requested by the Board of Selectmen and the Beautification Committee. Basically just puts a little bit more teeth in our general bylaws for non-littering, for littering, and sets violations, fine at $300 per violation. Allows the police department and our health agent to enforce.
The health agent can issue citations.
Under this, yes, because it's a general bylaw. This isn't the master, the police, right? If you break the law, you can, the police can issue a citation.
Yeah.
This would be in addition to, this is a general bylaw within the town. This was modeled after another community in Massachusetts.
Through deposit sweep or abandon upon any public way.
Extensive list.
Not limited to trash, bottles,
Really pretty good.
cans, refuse, rubbish, garbage. It's like a thesaurus.
Kind of is.
So this has to be witnessed by whoever is issuing the citation, yes?
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to prove that you did it.
So if they found a bag of trash on the side of the road with your
You need it.
electric bill in there, your name, I guess that would qualify under this.
Well, that would.
Unless you threw it in the truck of someone else and they threw it out.
Your name in the bag.
Yeah, but you didn't throw it on the road. And if you didn't witness me throwing it on the road, how are you gonna write me a ticket for it?
Right.
Hey,
Good
Cody,
point.
just
All the time.
a question. Are we required by any type of law, if we pass this, to do additional signage or anything like that across the town, notifying that we are, there's fines that are associated with littering? Just wondering.
So we would, there's no not necessarily a requirement that we do it, we would. I mean, this is already illegal, so if you're doing these things, the police already have an enforcement mechanism. This just goes a step further in our general bylaws, but this is already illegal if you do any of this.
Right, right, yeah. There's an MGL for
There is.
Yep.
Yeah, there
it.
is.
There's a mass general law.
Debtor's prison.
Yeah, there you have it.
Okay. Any further discussion on Article 20? Motion to recommend Article 20.
So,
Second,
Thank you. Roll call vote. Cheryl?
Yes.
Mike Bennett?
yes.
Frank Johnston?
Yes, on Article 20.
Ed Bryan?
Yes, sir.
Bill Smith?
yes.
Mike Rugnetta?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well.
So Article 21 is the zoning bylaw amendments. I can't recall if the finance committee in Halifax, I need to look back, provides recommendations in zoning bylaws. I know the planning board is required to, and obviously it's proposed by the board of selectmen. Regardless, I'd recommend that if the board does, the finance committee does provide a recommendation at town meeting, I can't imagine anyone's seen all the changes. Our goal was to try to include them in the warrant, all the updates, but when I put them in last week, it would have put our warrant over 200 pages.
Well,
And I don't think we really have an appetite for a 200-page warrant. It would probably cost us $30,000 to $50,000 to get it mailed out and printed to everybody.
oh, yeah.
So we're likely gonna do an attachment, QR code, get it,
Right,
and then,
right.
and then if someone wants a copy, we'll probably print it for them if they want it in. But just to send out 3,500 copies of a 200-page document.
No.
No.
When a lot of people unfortunately have to take a look at it, so this one I'd say you hold off on, and if you do provide a recommendation, provide that.
Okay.
Article 22, this is an item that the Board of Selectmen had requested. It's a proclamation to the state, basically on the town's stance on MBTA zoning. So this was drafted and approved at the last Board of Selectmen meeting.
This is what Selectman Bruno read, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes. Didn't somebody requested changes or suggested changes? Some of the wording.
No, there was some members of the public that
Yeah.
didn't like,
See it, yeah, they
didn't see a
just,
point in it,
Right.
but the board did vote on it.
Questions on Article 22?
What's our stake in voting for this or approving, recommending?
I think we make no recommendation. That's my opinion.
Yeah, because really, at this point in time, there's no financial impact with the exception of litigation, I guess.
Correct.
Right, but there's been a couple of years where we've had no recommendation, and
Right.
people get a little testy over
They
it.
don't like.
They want us to have an opinion on everything.
But it'd have to fit into our,
Well, I would think, yeah.
I don't think there's any financial, this article has no financial impact on the town.
No, not at all.
So I don't know what play we have there.
It kind of does and it kind of doesn't. I mean, there's ways to stretch it that it could.
Well,
have
that's true.
financial
It's
impact.
elastic enough to say if we
Yeah.
have to spend attorney's fees, then there's a financial impact.
Right.
So,
Technically, the article itself, though, is just a proclamation.
Right.
So to Mike's point, there's really no financial impact on the article itself.
right.
So,
You're just saying, do you want to make this an official town of Halifax proclamation and send it off to the state in a stance against MBTA zoning? Whether you do that or not, well, certainly there's no financial impact of that.
So we could have no recommendation.
Yeah, there could be a financial impact of the law itself,
Yeah.
but you sending, of the town sending this proclamation or not, there's no.
Doesn't involve that, no.
Maybe cost us a couple cents to print it if we want to mail it.
Right.
But it's the only financial impact I really see.
Yeah,
Thoughts?
I would say recommend to have no recommendation. There isn't a real impact.
I'll second that, if that's your motion.
That'll be my motion.
I'll second it.
So the motion on the floor, and that's been seconded, is to have no recommendation on Article 22. So can I get a vote and roll call vote? Cheryl?
Yeah, that's my vote.
Okay. Mike Bennett?
Yes.
Frank Johnston?
Yes, on Article 22, no recommendation.
Ed Bryan?
Yes.
Bill Smith?
Yes.
Mike Rignetta?
No, Mike is away
Oh,
from.
Mike is
Mike is
missing.
away from his desk.
Mike is missing.
MIA.
Yeah, well, we'll hold that as an abstention then, I guess.
Yeah.
IMS also a recommendation of no recommendation, Article 22.
All right,
So,
Yep.
now we get into the citizens petitions. So you see we have a number of those this town meeting. I'll give you as much information I have. Some of them, I have as much information as you when you read it. I can also advise that in speaking with legal counsel, several of these are not legal. Several of these as written would have no legal bearing. It would not do anything. But law requires that they have met the certification structure requirements. We have to put it on the warrant as written. So this first one is proposed by Alan Diaz and 13 others to basically authorize the Board of Selectmen to sell 2 lots of land on Vernon Street off of Snow Street for a sum of money not less than $500 plus legal fees.
okay, this is gonna get a lot of questions for me, Cody.
Who's the abutter?
Yeah.
Alan Diaz.
There's the first
Yeah.
one.
Well, he's also head of the Conservation Committee or
Right,
something.
but, you know,
Yeah.
And how do we come to the sum of $500?
So it's at least 500. So the board would determine an amount.
No less than.
no less.
No less than 500.
What does the town currently do with the 2 lots?
Nothing, they're vacant. They were taken as part of tax title.
How big are they?
They're very small. I don't have the exact.
5,000 square feet.
I think that if we're gonna sell them,
So we are in the process of a lot of our other properties getting auctions together. We're gonna try to do kind of a big auction, have an auctioneer come to town and auction them all off. But again, this is a petition article, so it has to be on warrant.
right, I'll agree that that should be the fair way to go with it. Concerns of selling to somebody that's an abutter to the property and nobody else in the town can bid on the property.
As written, it does say 2 in a butter.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's not like it's up for public sale.
right.
No.
That would be correct as written.
So I would say no.
I'm not very,
That's a big,
No, with wanting to go to auction.
right.
right, exactly.
Yeah, we get more.
If we've got a plan in place for additional properties and we have a couple
Yeah.
of days of sales or vice versa,
Right.
it allows the opportunity for other people to come in and potentially gain additional funding that way to cover, hopefully, the cost of the property taxes, at least on it.
Are things supposed to be auctioned if they're over $15,000 in value?
I don't, there is a threshold. The threshold changes every year. There's a land of low value in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the threshold is for each year, but whatever that threshold is, this law is legitimate if town meeting approves it. So the law, in speaking with council, the law exists.
Yeah.
Sure. Well,
But I just feel that if we're putting an auction together,
Right.
throw it all in,
Yeah.
and just to go.
yeah, because we could probably get more than $500.
Exactly, yeah,
This does have to
yeah,
me, has financial impact on the town.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
feel it's something that we should
Oh, yeah.
either recommend or not
And
recommend.
it behooves us to get the most money that we can get for the land
Right.
to help the town general budget.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's how I see it. And that's, I'd make that motion that we say no.
Okay, so this is a not
And
recommend.
not recommend.
Okay.
No,
Okay, you're making a motion to
Yes, sir.
not recommend Article 23. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Cheryl?
not to recommend.
Mike Bennett?
Yes. But not recommend.
Frank Johnston?
Not to recommend Article 23 by the Finance Committee.
Correct. Ed Bryan?
Yes, to not recommend.
Very good. Bill Smith?
Yes to not recommend.
Mike Brugnetta?
Yes to not recommend.
And a yes to not recommend Article 23. So the Finance Committee does not recommend Article 23.
Article 24 was a zoning petition to see if the town will vote to allow body art establishments, also known as tattoo studios, as a permitted use in commercial zones.
Now,
Again, this is another zoning one. Planning board's having a public hearing on it later this month, in addition to the other zoning, articles.
when we did the bylaw review, I know we talked about tattoo parlors. Did we have them in commercial or were they in industrial?
They were in industrial. They were out at the edge.
Edge
Right.
of town.
Edge of town.
So in most of the zoning bylaw stuff, you may recall, we didn't change necessarily zoning as much as clean things up, make it easier.
Right.
They really weren't zoning changes per se, where things were allowed. You really didn't touch much of that. So this,
By the chart, it's in the industrial, not actually in commercial then.
right now,
Yes, and they want to put this in commercial?
yep, so basically tattoo parlors would fall under commercial. You being allowed to be in commercial.
All body art establishments. Not just one, somebody wants to come in and put in.
No, this would change the zoning, so it would be, whoever. So we can't necessarily say just one, that's not a town meeting. The zoning isn't specific to establishments, it just changes zoning.
So this says that the planning board needs to make this recommendation.
This is one of those zoning ones, so if you were to make, if the committee want to make a recommendation, I'd say do it at town meeting, similar to the other zoning bylaws, if you do it. I can't recall if the finance committee has historically provided recommendations.
Right, on the zoning?
Yeah, I don't.
Unless
think
it's
so.
like permitting or anything like
Yeah.
that.
So, yeah.
18.
Yeah. We'll hold that for town meeting.
Article 25, vague in nature. The residents of Halifax and so again, you'll notice that some of these are written uniquely, and that's because it's exactly what the petition said, so we're obligated to provide that as written. This asks for an audit of town departments, committees, assets, liabilities, to recommendations to promote financial record-keeping processes and enhance the town's overall financial stability. And then there's some language there about trusts, allocating local tax revenues. I'll note town meeting allocates tax revenues, not elected local officials. Town meeting, right? Town meeting sets the budget. So that's one thing to note there.
We get audited every year
Yeah,
anyway.
we go through an annual financial audit. We're currently going through fiscal 24s now. All of our prior audits are on our website. We also recently underwent Department of Revenue Financial Management Review. You guys have seen that. There's several recommendations in there. We've done a lot of the things that we can do, but a lot of them are big picture kind of form of government that aren't able to be done at an operational level. But, and this is also,
I don't understand the last sentence. Each household needs this to have longevity of property ownership.
Because you do this at home. We need to do it here.
the other component, again, where the concern is, there's no funding source. So who conducts the audit?
Right.
What's the funding source? These
Right.
things aren't free. Is it an internal audit? Do they want me to conduct the audit? Do they want you? Like what?
They're gonna come in and do the audit.
But if we're already getting external audits.
Right.
We
Well,
go through we have to go through an annual.
Right, yeah, exactly.
yeah, but so just real quick, fundamentally, I agree with this, but I think there are just so many gaps in how it's written that it's hard to approve it as it's written. I think what it's driving at is, we go through an annual financial audit, which is great, but there's also audit firms out there that can come in and analyze process and policy and things like that, which is extremely helpful for all of us, not only the community, but it helps us as committees and boards be able to do our jobs more effectively. So I think the idea of doing a thorough audit on the town is a great idea. I just don't think that the way this article is written is set to really achieve what would benefit all of us, if that makes sense. And to Cody's last point, where are the funds coming from to do this? And even on top of that, there's no indication in the article as to when this audit should take place. So I just think there's a lot of areas where they need to be more specific in what we're trying to do, even though conceptually, to me, it sounds like a good idea.
But we don't know what it would cost to do an audit as written.
I
Right.
don't really know.
Well, it's not even time bound.
Well,
It's not like, for the last year, for the last 5 years.
again, I think
But if we don't know what it costs to do.
You don't.
we also did, so the Department of Revenue audit that we did last year kind of accomplished exactly this. It looked at all of our processes, procedures, particularly regarding finance and administration. But it did all of that and prepared a very thorough report with recommendations.
Right.
That didn't cost us anything because the Department of Revenue did it. But beyond that, I don't know. I don't know what exactly, like EJ said, without more particular information. I don't even know how we'd solicit bids for something like this because I don't know what the scope would be.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we can recommend this because it's just way too vaguely written. It doesn't give enough specifics, enough information that we can't really recommend this as a great idea.
Well, it's gonna cost us more money that we don't have.
Yes.
Well, it's gonna do that too. Yeah, it's an additional expense, but do we really need it where we already get an audit every year, an external audit, and then we have the DOR audit?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, so there's a couple that go on every year. So do we really need a third one? Is it really going to improve anything? Is it really going to help anything? I don't think so.
I think that this is something that should be sprinkled into some type of cycle where it's done once every 10 years or something like that. Once every 5 years, we have an external firm come in and do this because they do. They look at it is a much more holistic view of how the town government is working. You're going to get results from an audit like this that are not typical to the other two audits that we're referring to. There's no question about that. But again, it's got to be more thought out than this, though, in order for it to be effective.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I move that we vote no.
Yeah.
We not recommend.
Not recommend.
Okay. Does that the motion? To
That's
not
my motion.
recommend Article 25.
Second.
Very good. Roll call vote. Cheryl?
No.
Mike Bennett?
Not to recommend.
Frank Johnston?
Not recommend Article 25.
Ed Bryan?
Yes, to not recommend as written.
Very good. Bill Smith?
Not recommend, yes.
Mike Rugnetta?
Vote to not recommend, yes.
Third, and I am a not recommend on Article 25 also.
Okay, Article 26, the gist of it, from my understanding, is they're looking for an impact study of the proposed MBTA zoning mandate. And then once that impact study is done, to submit to the state auditor for a unfunded mandate determination. Again, no funding source here. If you were to do, bring in an external consultant.
Yeah.
So Cody, I got confused by this one. Are you able to clarify this?
Yeah, what, I guess.
All of it.
So, my understanding of this is, they would like the finance committee or, somebody hired by the finance committee to conduct, It does that sometimes,
Okay.
yeah. To conduct a financial impact study of the potential cost of the zoning change if it were to be passed on Halifax. You know, in speaking with council, a few of the concerns of this are, you're probably not going, it's gonna be costly, right?
Yeah.
So we need a funding source. But the other thing is, it's probably not going to be the best information. And the reason that I say that is, it's not like you have a proposed development in front of you where you can bring it to somebody who does these and say, provide us with an economic impact study. That happens. Municipalities do that. You know, a developer is proposing to build 150 apartments, you know, 25 of them are 3 bedrooms, X are 2 bedrooms, X are 1 bedroom. What's your estimated impact on the community? That's something we can do. We know where it's going to be. Right. This is very vague in the sense that we don't have a zoning overlay. It didn't pass. Right. So you would assume there'd be a lot of assumptions involved in something like this to determine a financial impact. And then you have to look at a lot of it would be infrastructure based. You know, would it require an upgrade in our school? Would it require a bigger town hall? Those are the types of things I believe that they are looking for as part of this study.
Yeah, and that's what was confusing me is the reference back to the zoning that was not passed.
Right.
If it didn't pass, why would we go back and look at it again?
Well, he wants us to do this because he wants us to help the auditor prove it's an unfunded mandate. When I read it, that's what it sounds like to me. He wants us to help prove it's an unfunded mandate. And that it's gonna cost the town money versus make money.
Yeah, but we don't have an approved measuring stick to measure that against because Tom got it down there. Yeah.
Exactly. There's too many variables.
Right.
And they're all unknown. And
Yeah.
that's what's difficult. That's what makes that very tough to do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Cody, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Have we heard from the state auditor's office to provide them with any information?
No, we have not sought a determination on this mandate. We're currently exploring our legal options with council and the board. Really can't get into it much beyond that, but
No, but I mean, the way he wrote, the state auditor's office is requesting information. Has anybody from the state reached out to us for the financial information that would help them?
No. So municipalities can seek a determination from the state auditor, which Middleborough did recently, right? And that's how this kind of all started. Municipalities reached out for a determination. The state auditor deemed it to be an unfunded mandate. Where you go with that, right, varies. So Middleborough initially was invoked suit against the state, but then they just reached a settlement with the AG's office last week, I believe it was. Right. And the important thing to note is Middleborough's whole argument was very, very different than Halifax's in the fact that they already have a 40R smart growth overlay district and kind of said, we're already in compliance with a different form of zoning. We don't have, that doesn't exist in Halifax. We don't have that argument. So our argument, again, if we were to litigate, would be on the basis of this unfunded mandate. And if you have an unfunded mandate, you can basically seek an exemption from the law in court. Right. That would be Halifax's avenue if we were to do that. But we have not been requested for any sort of information. And again, if you look at the letter that Middleborough sent, it's public. You can probably just Google it. There was a newspaper article about it. Their impact study is well, I'll just read it and I think you'll understand. It wasn't necessarily done by a professional firm with all these, there's a lot of variables. Like Mike said, it's just, we could certainly, if we were to go the legal route, we would do that. We would put together those numbers. But as far as a full economic impact study.
Yeah, it was just too many unknown variables right now, with this whole MBTA thing. So why, I don't recommend that the town of Halifax spends any more money on this until the dust settles, you know? And, to spend money on a, impact study for something that residents have already voted down, I don't see what the positive gain is at this point in time for the residents of Halifax.
Is that a motion, Frank? I'll second it if it is.
Well, just making my point on how I thought about it. And if you want a motion, I'll make a motion that we do not recommend to fund this project.
I'll second that.
This article, I mean.
So the motion is not to recommend, we are not recommending Article 26.
That is correct.
You've seconded it.
I second.
So roll call vote. Cheryl?
I vote not to recommend.
Very good. Mike Bennett?
Not to recommend.
Frank Johnston?
Not to recommend Article 26 at this time.
EJ?
Yes to not recommend.
Bill Smith?
Not recommend, yes.
Mike Rugnetta?
Yes to not recommend.
And I am a not recommend also, so Article 26 is not recommended by the Finance Committee.
Okay, Article 27, again, there's a lot of information here, but effectively, I believe what the article is asking is for the town to vote to stop all building permits for new housing, condos, rentals, or apartments, no more water services, and trench permits until the town vote to lift such mandate. This is one of those ones, been speaking with council, it's quite potentially illegal. Towns can issue moratoriums on building if there's a specific purpose and if it's for a time frame due to a reason. So if we had the inability to take on any new volume for water or sewer. Let's say top that Halifax had a sewer treatment plant and we had no more capacity for treatment of sewer. The town could say, we're gonna put a moratorium on building any sort of sewer connections, anything with a sewer connection. But we're working towards expanding our capacity. Just say outright putting a stop on building permits would present a legal challenge to the community. In addition, as written, it says trench permits, and it's not legal for us to say, you have a broken water pipe going into your home, we need a trench permit to fix it. No, we can't issue that trench permit, right? We can't do that, right? That's not realistic. But again, that's how it's written. And also, just to be clear, we do not have a water capacity issue in Halifax.
I was just gonna ask that question. Isn't that up for the water department to determine what the capacity of the water is? If want to build a new home, can they provide a water tap for that home?
Yep. In my discussions with the water superintendent, we are not concerned with water capacity.
So if there was a concern, can the water supervisor or department head or however that he is down there say, I cannot issue a permit at this time due to water restriction? He has the authority to do that, not issue a water tap?
I don't know if it would be him or if it would go through the water commission, but effectively, if we don't have capacity, we can't. But there's a permit, right? So if you want to interconnect, there's an interconnection permit. If we don't have capacity, we can't grant the permit.
But per the water department, we have enough capacity for building?
Yes, we have no concerns about capacity. We are not at our capacity within our current wells. And in speaking with our water superintendent, there's also possibilities where if we were to get close to capacity, we likely could seek more, some more withdrawal from our permits with DEP. But we're not at our capacity or really that close to our capacity with our existing permits, our well permits right now.
Is there a lead issue with the water At the schools?
The lead issue is, so, it's really not even related to this, but,
I'll fix it, I thought.
so, yeah, we have to do testing at our schools. Some levels came in a little bit high, about a year ago. At that time, out of an abundance of caution, we basically put signage up that certain sinks were for hand washing only, and then we provided spring water, in the interim for cooking and for the kids to drink. Since then, what we've done is, all of the drinking water have filters on them. We've tested several times and there's no lead identified with those filters. We put filters on all the cooking equipment. And we've also, there's no requirement that we have to have sinks in every classroom. That's not a requirement.
No.
And not every classroom even has sinks, but some of the classrooms over there have sinks. Rather than go through and have to continue testing these or put these filters on every single one, we cap the sinks in the classrooms because there's still adequate, sinks in the bathrooms and other areas of the school. But it was, again, we looked at the cost, and it wasn't cost effective for something that really wasn't required. And a lot of schools don't even have that.
Right, they don't the older ones.
So there is no ongoing issue there. It has been remediated with some filters. And also, we don't know, we couldn't pinpoint where the issue came from. Is it an issue with the pipes in the schools? It very well could be, but we're not testing, right? So we have to do testing of our water system.
Right.
And we're passing those tests. There aren't concerning levels of lead in the water throughout the system. The lead levels were at the elementary school, which leads us to believe that it could have been fixtures, right? Some of our fixtures are old. It could have been some of the pipes. So with testing, the most cost-effective thing to do was put those filters on. And we continue to change those.
And I do notice comments on the Halifax page about brown water. I know at Twin Lakes, the front part of I don't have it, I live in the back, I've never had an issue with water, but a lot of the folks that live near the road have trouble with brown water all the time.
Yeah, I know, and again, this is where, not to get into our form of government here, but the Water Commission is an elected commission. You elect them. They have a water superintendent that reports to them. We obviously work together because we're all in town of Halifax, but I have no jurisdiction over them. The board of selectmen have no jurisdiction over them. In speaking with the water superintendent, some of the, again, brown water, I understand. We are testing, okay. It's not, we don't have a water quality issue per se with testing, right? I understand the optics that maybe it looks brown, but our quality when we test it is fine. We're not in any issues there. We didn't do as much flushing this past year because we were buying some water from Brockton due to the ongoing renovations and we're paying for it rather than us extracting it. So we're gonna get back to flushing. I believe we already have because that connection is shut off with Brockton. So hopefully that helps. But as far as an actual quality issue, our water test is fine.
Okay.
From a chemical standpoint, but there is an issue in the town, several parts of the town regarding discolorization of water.
Yeah.
And that's something that should be addressed, but this isn't the way it goes about it.
They don't want us to build.
Right.
They don't want speed, mosquito.
No, brown water has nothing to do with new housing.
No,
Right.
it's a flush.
No,
You gotta flush.
Not building isn't gonna fix it.
No, it's not.
Won't fix the issue.
so I say, doesn't fit into this realm
Right. Yeah.
of the Article 27. And according to the water department, we have enough water availability if somebody wants to build a new home
Right.
to get a water service.
Well, again, just on its face, just the trench permit piece is.
Well, yeah, right, that's, talk about that.
Makes it undoable.
Technically, you
That
don't
makes it
need
undoable.
to tap into the water supply, to build a new home, but it will.
if you have a
Well,
permit to
that's
put a
an
well.
option here too, yeah, we have that option.
Right. And a lot of towns have gone back to well water again because they can't get tap fees.
Well, yeah, they've had to, change the way they, build homes, they can't say you have to connect to the water lines.
Right.
You also have the option of putting in your own well.
Well,
Right. Some towns don't have adequate supply.
Yep.
And a lot of it's going back to putting wells in at additional cost.
Right.
Right.
Remember when that happened in Brockton? Israel?
yeah, they do.
There was a couple of years there, it was a little tough.
So if I understand the conversation, we are not going to recommend Article 27.
Sounds like it.
I'd make a motion that we do not recommend Article 27 as written.
Second.
Very good. Roll call vote. Cheryl?
Yes.
Mike Bennett?
Yes, but not recommend.
Frank Johnston?
Not recommend Article 27 as written.
Very good. Ed Bryan?
Yes, to not recommend.
Bill Smith?
Yes, to not recommend.
Mike Rugnetta?
Yes, to not recommend as written.
And I would not recommend this either. That is not recommended.
Okay, Article 28 is, as written so the regional, health group is, Halifax is the host community for this one.
Yes.
We bring in about $400,000 a year. We have an intermunicipal agreement with, the Bridgewaters and Rainham. That's it, right? Bridgewater, East Bridgewater, West Bridgewater, Rainham, Halifax. I think that's, Middleborough, yes. And basically allows for,
Where'd that come from?
yeah, several things that benefit not only us, but the other communities. Again, it's 100% grant funded through the state. We have a few employees are funded via it. And it basically says, what it allows is anything that we want to do beyond our requirements are funded by this grant. So let's say restaurant inspections are required twice a year.
Right.
If we want to do 4 a year, those 2 additional are paid for under this grant.
Right.
If we want to do other sorts of outreach, it's covered under this grant. One of the other really nice things about it is, if our health agent gets sick or out of the office, normal times, I'm either scrambling right to another community, hey, can you help us out if we have an emergency? Under this, either it's one of the other agents from the other town or one of the employees under this grant is automatically there available. So if our health agent's away, this employee automatically steps in, and there's no lack of services. So
Doesn't this also allow for a nurse as well, if I understand this? Talking with Bob in the past, it's included cost for a nurse,
the costs are included for that. The logistics behind that are
a little
a
different.
little bit different.
Yeah, okay. Now, we became the host community 2 or 3 years ago, I believe. And Bob, the health agent is kind of the administrator for several towns for this. So there's no cost to us to do this.
We're ensuring that there is no economic impact on the town.
Correct. Yeah, because we get funding's put into this and it's distributed amongst the other towns in Halifax on an as-needed basis for certain things.
Yep, so yes, exactly. So the employees are technically town of Halifax employees covered by the grant. We make sure that we're being reimbursed for, any sort of benefits costs. We've looked at all of this. And then we also, in the intermunicipal agreement, we made sure to include a portion where if there were costs beyond the life of the grant, that the community, all the municipalities are on the hook to pay for those costs. So if some of the costs in the future were to come up after the grant expires, because that's one of the concerns, right? Money goes away, maybe there's an unemployment cost, right, or something. The other communities are all equally on the hook. But we also make sure that we're billing a fringe rate that is going to cover those things.
So what's the bureaucracy of this?
I'm not sure. You would have to ask.
Are we solving a problem by doing this?
Well, we don't know.
It's an additional service to, oh, by approving this article?
Yeah,
I don't think we have a problem. Operationally speaking, you know, when I sit down and meet with our health director regularly, it seems like a benefit to the community. There's there's a cost to us.
But they want to do away with it.
Right.
Fine.
and then
Well,
they're gonna put it,
that's the
looks like
problem.
they're gonna put it all on the town and.
So there's no control taken away as a result of this. We
Right.
still retain all of our local control.
Right, yeah.
With everything. And we actually have local control.
So even with this, we're not ceding control to anyone else.
No.
So then,
What's the point?
I don't, you know,
So we would
and the
just
power
incur
of
more
the
costs.
CEC is also curious.
So it's ultimately, we would go back to, we would go back to providing our base level services and not provide anything beyond.
Yeah, this gives us a little bit more services, a little bit more financial,
Right.
money gained into our health department, kind of on a regional type level, is how I understood it. When it originally came in, and I talked with Bob about it, he was explaining that to me, that we were the host community, and we'd manage it at no cost to Halifax, because of the reimbursements from the state.
They're also, we're reviewing the intermunicipal agreement, but we could run into a contractual obligation where we have a contractual, we signed a contract with the other municipalities to be the host community.
Yes.
So if this were to pass, there could be some breach of contract issue. Or, you know, we would certainly have to look to see if another community would take on the host, and then we wouldn't, the way it's written now is we wouldn't be part of that anymore.
Yeah.
And then we'd lose.
I find it to be, the having that is somewhat, is positive to the town.
I see no reason to.
Nobody ever pushed it going.
So I'll make a motion that we not recommend.
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion to not recommend Article 28 and a second, so roll call vote. Cheryl?
Yeah.
Not
Yes,
recommend.
no, yeah.
Mike Bennett?
Yes, not recommend.
Brian Johnson?
Not recommend Article 28.
Ed Bryan?
Yes, to not recommend.
Bill Smith?
Yes, to not recommend.
Mike Rignetta?
Yes, to not recommend.
And I do not recommend Article 28 as well, so it's a 7-0 not recommend.
Article 29,
What's the stretch code?
stretch code it was adopted, it's our chapter 140, let's see. It's in our our bylaws, chapter 148, it's the stretch energy code. It was adopted in 2015. It's basically, it was a requirement as part of the Green Communities program in the state of Massachusetts, that if you want to be a green community, you adopted the stretch energy code, and it makes you eligible for grant dollars. It basically adds on to some of the building regulations. Note though, the new building code is much stricter than the stretch code in some cases. So even if the town were to not take part in the stretch code anymore, there's certain things that would still have to be applied as part of the new building energy code, right? Like there's some things, I'm not a building commissioner, but you know, there's certain things where wiring has to be in place for solar. You don't have to put the solar in, but the wiring has to be in place. That's part of the new building code.
Right.
You have to have wiring in place for an electric vehicle charger in homes.
Oh, yeah.
So those things would not change. The stretch code itself would. It has to do with, you probably all heard of HERS rating on homes, home energy ratings. When you're doing a new home, you have to get this rating and make sure it's above a certain amount. So you provide that documentation. But again, the town's been in it since 2015. It's pretty widely accepted throughout the state, the stretch code. There's probably close to 200 green communities in Massachusetts now. And again, as a requirement, you have to have the stretch code. Why they particularly want to remove it, I'm not sure. You'd have to get that information from the petitioners.
I know the last two, she put the least amount of words.
Yeah.
Difficult.
Okay, So I don't see the logic here, personally.
I don't see it either. I actually see benefit in it.
Right.
But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about finances.
Right.
So.
Well, if the building code's already stricter than what the stretch code is.
Correct.
You know,
Right. It overrides it.
right.
Right.
So it's really kind of moot regardless of what happens. So I would say I would not recommend this for the town to vote on.
Are you making the motion, Jim?
Can I make the motion? So I will make the motion that Article 29 is a not recommended by the Finance Committee.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote. Cheryl?
I agree, yes.
Mike Bennett?
Yes, to not recommend.
Frank Johnston?
Do not recommend Article 29 as written.
Ed Bryan?
Yes, to not recommend.
Bill Smith?
Yes, to not recommend.
And Mike Rignetta?
Yes, to not recommend.
Not recommend as well.
Article 30 is effectively what they want to do is illegal in speaking with council. They want to require that any zoning changes require a 2/3 vote at town meeting and a referendum on the annual town election. All zoning changes can only be occurred at town meeting and no zoning change at a special town meeting. The concern with council was state law actually dictates what the requirement is for zoning changes. So if it creates housing, it's a simple majority now that was signed into law by Governor Baker. This would effectively be overruling state law, which council did not feel that we have the ability to do. The other portions are up for debate, legality, but the main concern was that whole requirement of the 2/3 because the state determined in a law that for certain zoning changes, it's only a
Simple majority.
Right. It used to be all zoning did require 2/3, but as part of the housing bill, under, like I said, under Governor Baker, if it created new housing, and meets some other criteria, it's simple majority now, and that's the state law.
Okay. Yeah,
You can't supersede state law.
no.
Well, this is trying to supersede the state law.
Yeah, you can't.
There a motion on the floor?
I'll move to not recommend.
Second,
Okay, so the motion and second is to not recommend Article 30. Cheryl?
yes, not recommend.
Mike Bennett?
Yes, not recommend.
Frank Johnston?
Not recommend Article 30.
Ed Bryan?
Yes, to not recommend.
Bill Smith?
Yes, to not recommend.
Mike Rignetta?
Yes, to not recommend.
And I may not recommend on Article 30 as well.
Okay. And then the last article, right, that's just the election warrant.
Right. Okay?
Any questions on the warrant?
There's quite a few of them here tonight. All right. We have a couple that we'll discuss prior to, Jim, is that correct?
Yes, we do. Article 21 will be at town meeting. Article 24 will be at town meeting. And Article 7 will also be at town meeting.
All right.
All right, that's good. So that closes that agenda item. The follow-on item is administrative union update from the town administrator.
So I can't get into particulars of what the contract will look like because it's only a tentative agreement we reached. We don't have a signed contract at this point. What I can tell you is what has been built into the budget that you've seen will be enough to cover us for next fiscal year. So there will not be the need for additional funding under fiscal 26 under the tentative agreement that we've reached. Once we have approved the agreement, I'll share the provisions of it with you. But I can tell you that what we built out and forecasted aligns with what the town can afford, obviously, but what we're able to provide in the budget, which is good because we don't have any flexibility in the budget. So,
Right.
Okay. That's the new union, correct? With
The two new unions.
Two new unions.
Yep, so library is one unit, and then clerical admin is the other unit.
And they're both with the Teamsters,
Correct.
but it's two different units.
That's a tough union, the Teamsters.
Okay.
Yeah? Any questions for Cody on the CBAs or the two new unions?
So our other contracts are going into their last year in fiscal '26. So we'll begin bargaining those likely at the end of the calendar year for successor agreements starting in fiscal '27.
Cody, is it a 3-year that the tentative agreement's 3-year?
It is.
Okay.
So '26, '27, '28.
Okay.
And how many unions are there?
Total in town now?
Yeah.
It's 7.
Yeah, with the two new ones. Yeah, 7 unions.
For a little time.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
Well, town meeting last year created the new ones. So
That is true.
that was the creation.
Absolutely.
That is the result.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you, Cody. Appreciate that. So we will close out that agenda item. We will move on to community or committee liaison updates. If there are any at this time. We will pass on that agenda item, moving on to correspondence and as may arise. I haven't gotten any emails from anyone in the town in my email inbox. I don't think, has anybody else gotten anything?
Nothing.
No.
Okay, anybody have any business or anything as may arise that they would like to discuss with the committee while we are all here?
Just the 2 budget forums that we're going to hold. So we are going to hold you've heard me previously talk about this. We're going to do 2 budget forums this year, open them up to the public. The first one is scheduled for April 15th at 6 p.m. We're going to do them both here at Town Hall in the Great Hall. I don't think, you all need to be here. Obviously, if you're able to be here, it's good to have the finance committee, but, the 15th, and then the next one is scheduled for May 5th, which is the night of one of your meetings, actually. So be good to have you there. The idea really is, we've got this posted online, we'll get more information online, but we want to provide a thorough presentation, what was the process this year, where we ended up, and then allow people to ask questions prior to town meeting. So hopefully we can get ahead of things, and there may be things that come up in these forums that we don't have the answer prepared to, but we will get the answer and at least be prepared and hopefully come at it, because there's always, as much, we've done a lot of preparation, but there's always things that come up. So I hope our residents take advantage of this opportunity. We'll have a Zoom link, so we'll do it in person here. And we'll also have a Zoom link to allow people to take part. We're going to record them, and we will post them online as part of our budget page. As of tomorrow afternoon, if you go on our website, right on the homepage, there'll be an FY26 budget, and it's going to have quite a bit of information on the budget process this year. Or try to be as transparent as possible.
Yeah.
Cody, one quick question on the, if people do ask questions at those forums, will we get them the answers in between the forums or before town meeting online?
Yeah, so if I like to think we're pretty well prepared. If we have the answer, we're gonna go right through and we'll answer it right away. If something comes up where it requires further research, we'll work on that, and if they give us the information, we'll send them out the information. As I'm hopeful too that prior to town meeting, after these 2 forums, we can put together a little FAQ sheet of if we see themes, questions being asked, so try to get ahead of it for people who, haven't had a chance to attend a forum or at the time to watch one of these. If we see, okay, this is a continued question we're getting, let's put a little FAQ sheet together and get it online as part of that budget area sheet.
Yeah, that was my thought. There was like a Q&A report after the first or second forum before the town meeting, so the public had the answers to those questions before we got there. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Cody, for that. All right, anybody have anything else they want to discuss while we're all here? Very good. Hearing none, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is public participation. So anyone on the call, listening in, if you have any questions for the finance committee, please go ahead and ask. All right, hearing none, I will close that agenda item. And we'll move on to next meeting planning. What we currently have on the calendar is April 22nd. It's a Tuesday. It's the day after Patriots Day. That will be a Zoom call. And that'll be after the first budget hearing. So that's probably pretty good to get some feedback. We can all have that discussion at that point.
And then just if there's going to be a quorum, maybe just let Jim know if you're planning to attend this or not, and then, or if you know now, then we can post it.
I'm
gonna-
planning on it.
I'll be
I'll be there.
There's your
All right,
quorum.
we'll post it.
Okay.
So do you want to ask Katie to post?
Yeah, I'll send her.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important to be there.
Yep.
I can't. Last time taxes.
Oh, yeah.
So you want to fly
Come on, Cheryl.
It's tax day.
You can blow it off. It's only tax day.
So I think just for that posting, it's just, can we just put on there like open budget discussion?
Yeah, but I just leave it vague, budget, FY26 budget form.
Okay. All right. That done. All right. That is all that we have for tonight's meeting. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Well represented.
So moved.
Second.
Very good. Roll call vote. Cheryl?
Yes.
Mike Bennett?
Yes.
Frank Johnston?
Yes, to adjourn, please.
Ed Bryan?
Yes.
Bill Smith?
Yes.
Mike Rignetta?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well to adjourn. So thanks all for coming.
Have a good night.
Thank you.